audience. Hope everyone is doing well and keeping safe. Sorry for a slightly longer gap from the fifth episode to the sixth episode of Coffee Pe Charcha this time. But as they say, इंतजार का फल मीठा होता है, and meetha it is, as we have Amit, co-founder and CEO of No Broker, with us, and I'm really excited to have him. And I know Amit since we work together closely in PwC, and I got an opportunity to work closely with him and learn so much from him. And I believe Amit and No Broker need no introduction. Since its launch in 2014, No Broker has gone from strength to strength, and it has attracted almost $200 million in investment. And I think that's not as important, but I think what is important for us to really understand is what has Amit and team have done behind the scenes to attract that kind of a confidence, and what's the real story of building an institution like No Broker. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and happy to have you, Amit. How are you doing?
Good, Nishit.
Great. So Amit, I think let's start from the start. I think I still remember back in 2013-14 when we had met in one of the malls in Mumbai. And I believe you were very excited with the whole idea of entrepreneurship at that point in time. And I believe at that point in time, No Broker was on the drawing board, really, you know. So I just wanted to kind of take you back in that time and really understand from you, from idea generation to actually scaling up to the initial threshold level beyond which the organization can just run on its own. So what does it really take, and can you walk us through the story and the challenges and your learnings, because your learnings will be like advice to a lot of those young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I think at that point of time, personally, I was doing pretty well with working with a foreign bank with good salary and pretty comfortable life. And me, Akhil and Saurabh, we felt that the problem of brokers and the problem of brokerage is pretty widespread in India. And we had ourselves shifted many homes, and we found very little value that the brokers offer compared to the money that they charge. So when we took the risk and when I left the job and when we started exploring it, the initial challenge was in terms of investors saying that this is not a copy paste of any US or Chinese company, and that's bad. So that was a news for us. We thought innovative idea is good, but apparently not. And people do look forward to some comfort if it's a Uber or it's a Amazon, which is working somewhere else. So psychologically and emotionally, it was more about a journey of how to keep your smile when you are going to meet the 20th investor, and 19 investors have already said no. And you just want to go home and get rid of that meeting, but you need to show your enthusiasm in that 20th meeting also. So I think that's what we did. And customers always loved the option of not paying brokerage. So they supported us even when we were small. And as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, as I think we were discussing some time back, you get tens of calls congratulating you that, hey, great, you left your job. I wish we could do it. And after those calls, one day you are sitting alone on your bed with your legs folded in front of your computer, seeing 10 customers on your side, and you are wondering what's happening. Had I gone to office, I would have earned so much money today. So it's much more glamorous outside, but the fatality rate is pretty high.
Yep.
And hence there is a sense of, I would say, surety that you need to have, or at least, as I would say, a stop loss that, okay, I'm going to spend 1 year, 2 years to this. And for that 1 year, 2 year, I'll keep on fighting up. And then the funding happened, the initial team happened. In this initial journey, which was pre-funding, the objective was to be very, very frugal, because not only was I not earning, but I was also investing in the business.
Yep.
So the money depletes very fast. So it's a very, very fast depletion of the money. And my wife was also expecting, so that way it was a very bad time to start something. She also couldn't, she had to join the job back to get some cash coming in. And so we kept very frugal. We hired people. There used to be a site called babajobs.com.
Yeah.
And it was pretty popular at that point of time. So I hired a lot of part-time housewives. I called them. Somebody might be working in Madurai or Havana, and they are very good, very talented, pedigreed women who gotten married and has to handle household and kid, but they were free in the first half of the day when the kids go to school. Okay. So I personally used the website and hired them. and they worked for us part-time. After we got funding, then we started office. So that was the initial journey, to keep it very frugal, to use whatever sources you have, to find people to work with you who have similar aspirations / constraints and match with yours, and then make do.
Okay, interesting. So and while I understand you use the hired some housewives to kind of help you in that, but what 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 was your experience of building the sort of core team, right, which really takes up some large responsibilities within the organization? And because what happens is that team, I mean, making a hiring mistake is always a problem, right? But making a mistake in hiring at that point in time has a much bigger cost, right? So how did you ensure that you are really thorough in terms of identifying the right people for you? Because a lot of startups at that point in time don't have a clarity on what culture they want to imbibe and cultivate in their organization. So what, any learnings, any experiences on that side as you look back?
So one is that we always try to, as far as senior positions concerned, we always try to hire the best person that we could in terms of experience, in terms of pedigree. But what we also realize over time is that this can be just a threshold. What is a critical thing is that the person who is joining you must have a push. So pull is that, okay, I am giving you this role and I am basically giving you these financial terms, but there should be a good push from that company out. So that person should have a genuine reason why he's not enjoying work anymore, and why this opportunity with no broker makes much more sense. So I have noticed that only the pull doesn't work. A good combination of push and pull works more. And second is, the people who really excelled were the ones who wanted to do something of their own. So the way in which, and we have worked together, so that the objective is that I personally love huge amount of independence. Yeah. And hence the people who work with me, I love giving them huge amount of independence. And I personally believe in a concept called optimal circle of ignorance, which basically means that after a point of time, I don't want to know about your business, your sub business, because then it becomes very difficult whether I am suggesting or whether I'm intervening.
Yeah.
So now the situation is that today the leadership team, which has say 15 to 20 people working with me, they are mini entrepreneurs on their own. If any one of them was having this discussion with you, you will not be able to identify whether they are co-founder or I am the co-founder. They are so passionate and so good. And the truth is, most of them are better than me, which I don't tell them so often, but that is the truth. So they are much better than me, doing the entire business on their own, leading them. And yes, we did had our own mistakes in terms of hiring people who came perhaps for a salary or perhaps for a glamorous intent of working in a startup, but didn't actually wanted to own a business.
Yeah.
So our learning has been that whenever such marriage, it is going to fail, quickly cut the cord. Don't be emotional about it, because it hurts business, it hurts the career of that person also in the long term.
Yeah.
So whenever we have had a wrong hire, we have quickly tried to cut the ties and move ahead. So this has been the experience with the senior leadership team.
Yeah, this is like really interesting, optimal circle of ignorance, because you're absolutely right. The moment you step into the sort of sub area or sub business, it's very difficult for you to keep back that, if you know details, you will have some logic that you will apply, which may not actually be consistent with the logic that the mini entrepreneur is already doing. So it's an interesting concept, optimal circle of ignorance. One other thing, Amit, and this is something I have also seen, and a lot of my fellow entrepreneurs also feel, and I'm sure, see, when you are starting up and when you are in the initial phase of the journey, right? And I'm taking a lot of time in the initial phase of the journey, because that's where things make or break, and that's where the maximum, drop off is. So, every day in a startup in the initial phase, at least, is like, there's a day when you have a high where you get some extra customers. There's a day then where you just don't get any traffic. It's a roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster. Every day you encounter success and failures, and more failures initially than successes. So in such scenarios, how do you really keep the team motivated? Because it impacts the motivation of the team. As a founder, you have to first manage yourself because those failures also impact you, and you have to kind of really get over that and motivate your team. Any thoughts on that, that how you have been able to manage that well?
So the approach is slightly different when it comes to the junior last mile people who are dealing with the customers versus the leadership team. The both the teams, both the layers look at you. If you are too much worried, then it basically translates to them. So of course, even while as a co-founders we are worried about something, we need to make sure that we don't unnecessarily pass that pressure to the other two levels of teams, because then it is counterproductive. The last mile team, which is working with customers, is mostly concerned with the fact that are the things going to be okay in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
So because they are more concerned about the immediate impact, is there any immediate impact? So what we realized was that even after we got funding, the teams wanted to know, hey, this company, because what we did was we took our office in a home, in a floors home. We said we are not going to basically take a good office because we want to attract the right kind of people. And anyone who comes to it for interviewing in this house, which has a kitchen and which has those bathtubs, basically knows that it's a startup, and the startup attracts a sort of talent. So let it be a sort of criteria for people selecting us and us selecting them. So the people who were at the junior most level, we made sure that we do the town hall, whatever you talk, say in terms of 10 people or 20 people, that's a town hall at that point of time. So we used to have a town hall every Friday to make sure to tell them, even the junior most person who doesn't understand what is digital marketing, what is customer acquisition, even we used to tell them, this is how we did last week, this is how we are doing, this is what investors are saying, this is what we think is happening, to imbibe and transfer a sense of confidence of what things are happening. And if something is wrong, we will tell them that this is wrong and this is how we are correcting it, and what is the help that we need from. As far as the immediate second layer is concerned, which basically works closely with us, we have seen that it is generally good to be very transparent.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones who basically help us solve that problem. So if the problem is lack of revenue, lack of customers, lack of funding, whatever the problem is, there's always a solution towards it, that as to how you achieve it. So it makes sense to take your leadership team along with you, and they have to be that much mature to understand that we need to go past it. And startup journey is always, I often say, is like as if you are driving a car and you know that you need to go in north direction, and it has so much fog that you can only see 100 meters ahead. So you're driving and then you are taking right, left. Broadly it is not, but every 100 meter you are deciding whether this you need to take a right or a left or whatever. So you keep on getting flexible, and the leadership team helps you do that.
Yeah.
So that's how we did. Yeah. But yes, of course, the initial year and 2 year are always full of a lot of doubts and a lot of challenges. They still are.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because what I've seen is the reverse. So, example, the example that you quoted, that you made sure people come to your sort of office, which was in a residence kind of a thing. A lot of people I have talked to who are starting up and are in very early stages, they actually, run to get an office so that people can come and realize that they have an office, so they have trust. So I mean, it works both ways as well. It's also the reverse psychology that people get into. um, I mean, one other question, I think, given the scale up and given that you have built NoBroker from scratch to here, and given that the audience of this conversation is largely going to be a lot of HR leaders and people leaders, apart from a lot of entrepreneurs as well, is what's the founder's view on uh, when is the right time to have a people function in the organization? Obviously, when a startup starts, it's not that day one you have a so-called HR function or a people function, right? But for a formal people function, what is it that you really feel is the right time, um, or what is it that you did in NoBroker which worked well for you?
I think that's an excellent question. And when I look back in the past 6 years, if there was, I think broadly we have done well, although the journey is still very long and we still need to see whether we are able to crack this real estate problem or not. But the past 6 years, I would say broadly, I don't regret anything that we have done in terms of any strategic decision. Only one thing I regret, and which we corrected quickly, was not hiring a good HR function person and a good finance person very quickly. So my short answer to the question is day one. Even if you have 5 employees, 10 employees, you should have a HR person. You might start with a HR person who is junior, or you might start with a person who is senior. That depends upon the budget that you have. But it should be day one, because see, we are a first generation entrepreneur, so hence we have committed our own mistakes. We used to issue the offer letters on Word doc, converting into PDF ourselves. So even post funding, I felt that what is a big deal? I will just make an offer letter, I will send it across. And for what is finance, okay, I will pay the vendor. And me and Akhil, we used to basically pass entries in the internet banking to pay vendors. But it's a very bad approach. The reason is that HR and finance function should not be seen as something which are doing ABC work. They are laying ground rules for an organization that you are trying to build. And HR experts bring that sort of knowledge which our first generation entrepreneurs don't fully understand and appreciate.
Yeah.
But once you do through that journey, this is the number one learning that I would say, that get a HR person on day one. You don't think about whether there are 5 people or 10 people. There is a process, there are policies, there is a sort of culture which HR person tells you. Many a times HR person is also a conscience keeper.
Yeah.
That, hey, this is being too harsh on people, or are we being too soft on people? And hence, because the HR person has seen many companies in past, and he or she knows what works and what hasn't worked, so that knowledge you miss. So I would say day one.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I also am a believer in having those functions early on in the organization, because you know being through some of the startup experiences I have had, and I've seen the impact of not having a formal process oriented people function. The effects of these are kind of felt later in the journey, when you have
Yeah.
a large workforce which is either are complaining about parity in salaries, are complaining about parity in levels and all that stuff. So I think that's a very, very important and useful advice that you have given. And just since we
I
are,
would
yeah, go on.
I would say that the moment the team crosses single digit and comes into double digit, that is a time you have to take a HR person immediately.
Yeah,
Yes.
makes sense. And since we are on people kind of function, and we are running a hiring tech organization, I mean, what's No Broker's hiring philosophy? Is there something that No Broker stands for when it goes about looking for talent or acquiring talent from the market? Is there a specific set of guidelines or things that you look for in your hiring across all levels? I mean, I'm talking at a generic level.
So of course we have some sort of skill sets that are required every level. So those are minimum condition. But apart from that, I think what has worked really well for us is how hungry the person is. Because after a point, those skill sets lose their relevance. Every skill set can be learned if you are really hungry, if you are interested, you want to crack that job. In fact, I would say, in as far as our last mile people are concerned, people who talk to customers, call center executive, field relationship managers, we earlier used to have a bar in terms of minimum bar that you need to be a graduate. But we soon realized that the people who are 12th pass or even 12th fail, they are doing a better job because they are so much hungry to really prove their parents, their friends, that their worth in life. They are much, much hungrier, and their performance is much, much better.
Yeah.
Uh, so then we relax that criteria also. So hiring people remains to be a very tricky thing. I would still not be able to say that when we interview, do we really do it 100 by 100? We are also often wrong. But I would summarize in saying that apart from the minimum skill set that you need to do the job, being hungry is much, much more important than having a very, very star CV.
Interesting. So Amit, what next for No Broker? I mean, is there some plan that you can share? What is it that we are likely to see coming up, or what are some of the plans that you can share with us?
So we want to be very, very aggressive. Yes, COVID times have put some break in our plans, but we would want to continue to be aggressive because in overall real estate industry in India, we might be a largest player now in online real estate, but actually we should be compared with online plus offline real estate. And from that pie, we are still in single digit market share. We are barely 10% market share in the cities that we are in. So there's a huge, huge opportunity for us to grow. We are not just doing real estate rental. We are in buy and sell. We are not just in residential. We do commercial buy and sell, commercial rental. We are now into packers and movers, painting, cleaning, furniture, home interiors, home loan, packer mover insurance, and No Brokerhood, which is a visitor management and a ERP system. So we have basically multiple levels at which we interact with customers. Huge opportunity to grow in each of those functions. So I think the next 5 years will have their own set of challenges in terms of execution, in terms of not being complacent. But one thing which will remain constant is need of having top-notch people. And top-notch doesn't mean top-notch CV. Top-notch basically means top-notch people who are hungry to participate in the journey, to crack it, to enjoy cracking it, getting more revenue, getting more customers. And we hope that we'll continue to attract the best of those people.
No, I'm sure. I mean, No Broker is quite a brand these days, and interesting that you have forayed into so many spaces, but you have ensured that first you have grown in one segment to a level, only then you started to foray, because a lot of people make that mistake of actually, foraying into multiple areas at the very start, right? So I think that's a great thing, and I believe a lot of success will depend on how you can converge these services and bring it as a single package to the customer, right? Wherein customer, from the point of finding the rental, packing, moving, and everything happens on your platform. I think that's a looks
Yes.
like a neat.
So in this also, if you see, there are instances for both these sort of organizations. There are organizations who have tried to do many things and they have failed at all. So it makes sense perhaps to just stick to one thing.
Yeah.
And the organizations like Amazon, Reliance, who have done multiple things and have been successful in multiple things. I would personally believe that the secret lies in people. If we are doing painting and cleaning, if I am trying to do painting and cleaning as well as real estate deals, of course it will not scale. But if the person who is heading painting and cleaning becomes like a mini co-founder and he handles the entire business on his own, and I in turn become a VC, an internal investor, and he becomes an entrepreneur, and I invest based upon the business performance that he is showing, then our relationship changes and the company changes from a 3 co-founder team to a 20 co-founder team. And if this is done in genuine intent, then there is no reason why you can't have so many businesses and really good, which converge and benefit customers to basically give end-to-end journey. So I think that is the hope.
Makes sense. And finally, Amit, it's important to ask this customary question given the times. What do you see in terms of impact of COVID, not just on No Broker as a business, but in general as a overall business environment, economic growth? What's your sense? Because no one really knows how it will end, but everyone has their educated opinions. So what's yours?
So as you said, it's very difficult to predict. Things keeps on changing every month. What I would say our mantra has been, don't predict, react. So we do not know how it's going to be August month, how it's going to be September month. So we are going to decide every month how is it that we are going to deal with this month. Given the situation in every city, given the lockdown, what we'll do this month. So every month is a new month for us. The only thing that we can ensure is being very, very nimble. So if 3 cities are open in this month. We are going to over focus on those 3 cities. Next month, other 3 cities basically come out of lockdown. We are going to focus on those 3 cities. So the approach will continue to be very, very nimble so that we can extract revenue, we can provide good customer experience, whichever city allows us to do in whichever month.
And how many cities now? No Brokers coverage?
So we are into 5 cities: Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, plus these 5 cities plus entire NCR.
Okay, interesting. Very good. So thank you, Amit. I think it's been a lovely last 20-25 minutes of conversation, and I believe there are a lot of things which I will put out when I summarize as well. And thank you for your time, and all the best for No Broker.
Thank you, Nishit. Thank you.
Thank you.